My lesson is 2.4.
Today we are going to simplify factors. Our essential question: how do you simplify fractional factors by using the greatest common factor? We did this a little bit in the lesson yesterday too because they wanted our answer in simplified form. So let's unlock the problem. Some of the corn grown in the United States is used for making fuel. Suppose 7/10 of the farmer's total crop is corn. He sells 2/5 of the corn for fuel production. What fraction of the farmer's total crop does he sell for fuel production? Well, I'm going to take my 2/5 and I'm going to multiply it by 7/10. Multiply the numerators and then you're going to multiply the denominators, right? So we have 2 times 7, so there's 2 times 7. We have 5 times 10, so there's 5 times 10. So 2 times 7 is 14. And 5 times 10 is 50. So that means we have 14 over 50. Now, you need to think about what they have in common, and they've already kind of given you the answer here, that 2 can go into both of them, right? So if I divide the top by 2, I divide the bottom by 2. 14 divided by 2 is 7, and 50 divided by 2 is 25. So my answer is 7/25. So another way is that you can write the problem as a single fraction. So as you can see here, they have our 2/5 times 7/10. So what they did is they just wrote 2 times 7 on the top and 5 times 10 on the bottom. So the two numbers in the numerator and the denominator, you want to ask yourself, do they have any factors in common with the number? And they do. They have the 10, right? So we're going to write 10 inches in the denominator. They have a common factor other than 1. So let's divide the numerator and the denominator by the greatest common factor. And the greatest common factor, we already said up here, because we've already done it before, is 2, right? So if I divide this by 2, I get 1. And if I divide this by 2, I get 5. So now 2 divided by 2 is 1, 10 divided by 2 is 5, right? So now what I can do is I just simply, now that I've kind of pre-reduced it before I've done it, now I have 1 times 7, see 1 times 7, which is 7, and then I have 5 times 5, which is 25. So it just kind of reduces it for me before I actually multiply it out. I'm okay with whichever way you choose to do it. Again, we try to show you different ways so you can find the one that works for you, right? All right, let's just do a few more like this so that if this is a new thing for you, you'll know how to do it. So we have 5/8 divided by, or times 14/15. So I could multiply 5 times 14, and I could multiply 8 times 15, and then I could reduce. Or prior to that, I could see what the greatest common factor of 5 and 15 is. So there's my 5, and there's my 15. And the greatest common factor is going to be 5, right? Those factors from the first chapter are coming in handy. So if I did that, 5 goes into 5 one time, so I'm going to cross cancel. And then 5 goes into 15 3 times. Now I'm going to look at my 14 and my 8. And the greatest common factor in those is 2. So 2 goes into 14 7 times, and 2 goes into 8 4 times. So now I'm left with 1 times 7 and 4 times 3. So 1 times 7 and 4 times 3. So when I multiply it out, I get 7/12. 7/12. So it's just kind of doing the same thing you would do, simplifying at the very end, but you're just doing it before you multiply. Let's do a few more. So the greatest common factor of 3 and 9, because I have to look directly across, is going to be 3. And the greatest common factor of 8 and 2 is going to be 2. So if 3 and 9, if I'm putting, how many times does 3 go into 3? It goes in 1 time. How many times does 3 go into 9? It goes 3 times. Now I'm on the 2. 2 goes into 2 1 time, and 2 goes into 8 4 times. So now I have 1 times 1, which is 1, and 4 times 3, which is 12. So my answer is 1/12. Let's do a few more of these. So 4 and 12, my greatest common factor is 4. And then 7 and 7, obviously my greatest common factor is going to be 7. If you don't remember your factors, remember, do your factor tree. 12, when I break it down, I get 3 and 4. Okay? And then when I break down All right. So let's do this. We've got 4 and 12, and I said we're going to put 4. So 4 goes into 4 one time, 4 goes into 12 3 times. And then over here, let me move this up a little bit. We've got 7 goes into 7 one time, and 7 goes into 7 one time. So now I've got 1 times 1, which is 1, 3 times 1, which is 3. So let's explain why you cannot simplify before multiplying when finding 3/5 and 6/7. Well, no number in the numerators have common factors with the denominators, right? So if I'm looking at this one, 5 and 6, they don't have a common factor. When I break apart 6, I get 3 and 2, right? And when I break apart 5, I get 5 and 1. So they don't have a common factor. So in this particular problem, I can't simplify it. You can only simplify prior if they have a common factor. Let's compare the strategies. What if you divide by a common factor other than the greatest common factor before you multiply? How will that affect your answer? Well, the answer would not be in the simplest form after multiplication. We would still have to simplify it. It's kind of the same thing where if I decided to simplify with a 2 and there was a bigger number that I could have simplified by, I would just have to keep simplifying. Okay, I'm going to do one more before I send you on your own. So if I'm looking at 5, 6, and 3/10, 6 and 3 have 3 in common. So 6 and 3, 3 goes into 3 one time, 3 goes into 6 2 times. Now I'm on 10 and 5, and they have 5 in common. 5 goes into 5 one time, 5 goes into 10 2 times. So I have 1 times 1, and 2 times 2 is 4, so my answer is 1/4. You may do the rest of the problems on your own or with a partner or a small group, or you may work with me as well. Good luck.